In this Unreal Engine 5 2D game dev tutorial, we're going to make a platformer tile map. For this tutorial, you can use your own platformer tile set, or if you don't have any 2D tiles, you can go ahead and go to this website called itch.io. Here you can find a lot of 2D assets, including tile sets and characters and so on. So I've gone into here and I'm using this one called Seasonal Tilesets, which is made by Graphics Kit. It is a free tile set, so you can go ahead and click on download now. And when you do this, you'll get it in your download folder. And remember to unzip this. So right click and extract this content so you'll get it out of the zip file. And here I have all of the assets that I need. So with that said, let's go ahead and launch the launcher here. So I'm using Unreal Engine 5.3.2. However, if you're watching this video later and you have a later version, you can still follow this tutorial. Everything will be the same. So go ahead and launch the engine. When you launch the engine, this tab will appear. Go ahead and click on games because that's what we're doing. And then I'm going to select the blank project. I don't like to start with a template. All of these templates you can actually do yourself once you know what you're doing. So I like to start with a blank project because I want to teach you everything from scratch and you will learn a lot more. So go ahead and click on the blank project. And also for the starter content, make sure it is not ticked. So right now it's like this for you maybe. So go ahead and untick it so we don't have anything in the project. It's a fully blank project. And the target platform is desktop. Everything is fine here. Go ahead and give it a name. I'm just going to call it Mario, for example, the classic Mario. Go ahead and click on create. If you're interested in Unreal Engine 5 game development courses, you can visit my website, gameinstruct.com. Here I make both single player and multiplayer courses with videos being released daily in 4K resolution. There's also a section for purchasing game-ready assets and another tab for hiring me for private tutoring sessions. I'm available 24/7 on my Discord server to help you out, and all of the links are in the description below. And here we are inside of the engine, and what I like to start with is clicking on this content drawer, and then clicking on dock in layout, and this is where all of our files are. I like to have it up all the time so I don't have to click down here every time. So over here in the content browser, we have to upload all of the assets that we have downloaded. So for this tutorial, I'm going to use this one called Grassland, but you can use any tile set that you need. If you want the Winter World or anything else, that is fine. You don't have to follow fully. So I'm going to use this one called Grassland. And here is the terrain. So these are the tiles that we need. And then we have some items here like trees and fences. And then we have the background over here. So for this one, first, I'm going to right click here and make a new folder. You can either right click here or you can click on add up here and make a new folder. That is fine. You can also right click out here, make a new folder. And I'm going to call this one assets. And then I'm going to go into this folder, right click and call this one tilesets. It's always nice to stay organized. So inside of this folder, I am going to drag these two in. I don't think I'll be using this one. So I'm just going to drag both of those inside of here. And also for the background, I'm just going to import this one, the static background here. Go ahead and import it. Now the problem with Unreal Engine is it smoothes out pixel art. So if you double click on one of the terrains here and you zoom in, you can see it doesn't look like pixel art. It's smooth. And this is really nice for 3D games. However, for 2D games, we don't really want this effect. However, it's something we can fix with one click. Go ahead and right click on it and go to Sprite Actions, and then go ahead and click on Apply Paper 2D Settings. And now when you double click on it and you zoom in, now you see it is true pixel art and everything looks good. So very easy fix. I'm going to right click on this one as well, Apply Paper 2D Settings, and also for the background, right click, Apply Paper 2D Settings. So now all of the assets look correct. I'm also going to rename all of the files because it's very nice to stay organized. So I'm going to call it T as a prefix for texture, and I'm going to call it Grassland. The second file I'm going to call Grassland Entities. The third one I'm going to call Grassland BG for background. Okay, so what we need to do to create a tile map is first we need to right click this one, go ahead to Sprite Actions, and then first create a tile set. So what is the difference between a tile set and a tile map? So let's first rename this one before I tell you. So TS for tile set, and let's call it Grassland. So a tile set, you can think of it as the palette. So you have the palette, just like if you're a painter, you have the palette and then you have the canvas which you paint on. So the tile set is basically the palette where you can see all of the tiles you can use. And a tile map is where you paint all of those tile sets on top of it. And you'll see what I mean once we get started here. So as you can see, when I click around in my tile set, it selects the tiles. However, it doesn't select them correctly. And this is because these tiles are 16 pixels by 16 pixels. And as you can see here to the right, it says 32 pixels by 32 pixels, which is not correct. So I'm going to change it to 16 by 16. And now you can see whenever I select tiles, it is more correct. Okay, so everything looks fine. Let's go ahead and save all. And this is all that we need to do inside of a tile set for now. So let's close it down. And now you can right click the tile set and go ahead and create a tile map. This one I'm going to call TM for tile map and call it grassland. So again, a tile set is basically the palette where you have all of the tiles, and a tile map is where you actually paint those tiles from your tile set. So inside of this tile map here, you can right click to navigate around. You can zoom in with your mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out. And then you can click on the tiles over here to the left on your tile set here. You can see this is the tile set grassland. You can click on it and then you can see it appears here. You can paint with the brush. Those tiles here, you can try to paint by clicking here. You can see I painted. You can click here as well. And you can have the eraser where you delete the tiles you made. Or you can have the fill and click here and it fills all of the space with that selected tile. Here to the right, you can also see we have something called layers. And if you've used something like Photoshop previously, it makes more sense to you. But basically what layers are is if you paint something, you have to make a new layer if you want to paint something in front of those tiles, like this, for example, and you can see I've painted in front of it. Or if you need to paint something behind those tiles, you have to push this layer downwards, and then you can paint basically behind those tiles here. And you can see I can click on the eye to remove this layer, and I can remove this layer as well. So you can paint behind layers and or in front of layers, depending on if you push this forward or backwards. But for now, we will need this later for the background, so let's remove it. Make sure again the tile width and height is 16 pixels by 16 pixels, or of course if you're using larger tiles for your own game, so 32 by 32, make sure it is that as well. Now, before we start painting, there are shortcuts for these tools up here. So clicking B, you select the paint tool and you can click here and paint. You can click on E to select the erase tool and you can erase, and you can select the G or click G on your keyboard to select the fill tool. And you can also click and drag to select multiple tiles at once. So these are really good things to know before you get started. And also for the map width and height, now you have to define how large is your map. And for example, for the width, I can say I want a map which is 25 tiles wide, like this. And for the height, I'm just going to tell it I want something like 15 as the height. Now, the thing is here, whenever you define your width and height, I like to add 15 tiles this way and 15 tiles this way. This is because when you're playing the game inside of here, like when your character is standing here, you will see a dark space here, and I don't like that. I like to fill it with those tiles here, like this here. So we have to add 15 tiles this way and 15 tiles this way, which makes it 30 tiles. So I'm just going to say plus 30, and you can hit enter, and it will automatically do that for you. And plus 30, enter, and it will automatically do that for you. So top and down and to the left and right as well. So let's start by just filling those tiles over here so we know where to paint correctly. So as you can see, maybe you can't see that on my screen, but it says it starts as 0 here, 1, 2, 3. So these tiles have numbers. I'm just going to paint until number 14 because it starts as 0. So now I have painted here. What I can do is I'm just going to define the sides so I don't paint over them. And I can click on G to fill. And I can click here and click here. And I'm also going to do that here on the top. So down here until tile 14, like this, and go ahead and paint it this way as well. And click on G to fill. Same way over here, it starts at 54. So I'm going down to 40. Go ahead and paint it here and define it like this. And then click on G. And also down here, go ahead and set it to 30 like this, and go ahead and delete those up here. Click on G and fill it. And now you have this space filled. So in the game, when you're standing here, you don't see black space, but you actually see those tiles instead. Okay, so now we are ready to paint over here. I'm going to click on the first tile up here. I'm just going to click on B. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint here. So just go ahead and fill those tiles in. Again, you can do this however you want. You don't have to follow 100%. You can do this with your own tiles. So I'm just going to paint here and click on this tile here, paint this edge so it looks correct. And then clicking up here, I'm going to paint this side up here, clicking on the other side, painting this side up here, and then clicking down here, and then painting the roof. And we're almost finished. I'm going to select this tile, paint it here, and select this tile, paint it up here. And now we're basically finished, but let's actually add a bit more like interesting elements. So for example, if we want a platform here, we can add it like over here, for example. And then down here, you need to change this as well. So selecting this tile over here, go ahead and paint this way, selecting this tile, paint this way, and select the middle tile and paint it here in the middle. So now we have this platform, and you can also make a flying platform by selecting, for example, these three tiles up here, and you can paint them like here, for example, and you can select those down here, paint it as well. And now we have a very simple map, and I actually like this. I don't want to paint anymore. And then you can click on this down here, for example. It's always nice to have a bit of a variation. So clicking down here, I can click on those tiles, like just spam this tile here anywhere you want. It creates like some sort of variation that you see this large star sometimes, and it's not really important, but it makes your tiles look a lot better. Okay, so when you're satisfied, we need to add as well those trees that we looked at. So I'm just going to close this down for now. And we have some trees here that we can add as well, just to make it a bit more interesting. And again, you have to create those as a tile set. So try to do that without me, just for practice. And now let's go ahead and do that together. So let's right click the grassland entities here. Again, go to sprite actions. We already applied the paper 2D settings. So let's just go ahead and create a tile set for those. And I'm just going to call it tileset grassland entities. Go ahead and enter here. Again, the tiles are 32 by 32, which is wrong. So we need to change it back to 16 by 16. Go ahead and save everything. Let's close it down. And then let's go ahead and open up the tile map once again. Now inside of here, to change the tile sets, you have to click on this up here, this small button, and then you can change into another tile set. So go ahead and select this one instead now. And what you can do is you can click on the item again, just like before, and then you can go ahead and paint it. For example, you can paint this over here. You can paint this bush over here, for example, and you can paint this tree over here, just beside this bush. But as you can see, when I paint this, it deletes the bush over here. And the way you do this, again, I told you before, you can actually create layers. I believe it works if I just paint this and I then paint this beside it. You can see it works because it actually, without you knowing, it actually deletes this layer down here, but the layer is empty, so you won't see anything. However, to do this correctly, let me just click Control Z. Now we have this bush back here. Now when you paint, it deletes it. And the way we avoid this, again, create a new layer. And with this layer, you can, for example, call it back layer or something like that. And you can call this one. By the way, you can click on F2 on your keyboard to change the name, or you can right click and click on rename. So F2, and we can call this one base layer. So the back layer, I'm going to push this down to have it in the back. And you can paint now this tree, and you can see it doesn't delete your bush over here. And then I'm going to create the other tree in the back layer as well. I'm just going to paint it here, for example. I think everything is good for now. I don't want to paint more. Now let's go ahead and do the background. So let me close this down again. Right click this background, sprite actions, create a tile set. Go ahead and call it TS Grassland BG. Now, as you can see, it is green, and this is a problem. So something happened. And this is usually whenever Unreal Engine changes a texture you have uploaded to a normal map, which is used in 3D games. And this is because normal maps are usually blue inside of Unreal Engine, and it thinks this is a normal map, so it changed it for us, which is not correct. So the way you change this, you can see it changed it to a normal map. You can always go to the other texture and see what the settings are, and it is a user interface 2D. So you can open up this one and correct it. So click here, change it into a user interface 2D. And over here in the texture group, go ahead and change it to, let's find it here, it is 2D pixels unfiltered. And then down here for the sRGB, go ahead and select it. This is basically telling that this texture is a colored texture and it is not the like blue, a normal map. So now it is correct. As you can see here, everything looks correct. Again, the size is 16 by 16 pixels. And let's close it down. Let's open up the tile map now. And let's paint the background as the final thing. Again, so click up here, choose the background. I'm just going to go ahead and select the whole background, and I'm going to paint it here. So I'm going to paint something like this. Again, remember, you can't paint like this, else you will delete your trees. So go ahead and make a new layer. I'm going to call it background and move it down. So it is in the background, and you can go ahead and paint like this, paint like this. And for the top layer up here, I'm just going to select the blue field over here, click on G to fill, and go ahead and fill those layers. Okay, so everything is looking great. We're basically finished with the tile map. Again, you can spend a lot of time designing your maps and make them more interesting. Now, the settings we need to change over here to the right. We don't have to do much. However, here for the collision, you need to change it to 250 in the thickness. And this is because when you need to spawn enemies later on for your map, you actually need a thickness for the collision, because if you do 50 as default, your enemies will not move on your 2D map. They're just standing still, and you don't know why they're not moving, even though your code is correct, everything is correct. So go ahead and change this to 250 as a minimum for the collision thickness, and it will work just fine. Go ahead and save all of your progress. And now let's go ahead and add this tile map to the level. So as you can see, Unreal Engine usually starts with this level here. We don't want that. This is a 3D level. So let's go ahead again in the content folder. I'm going to right click, make a new folder called maps. And I'm going to right click inside of here and make a new level. Go ahead and do that. And I'm going to call this one map grassland. Go ahead and enter this grassland, the map that you just made, and you can see everything is black. And you can also see it here in the outliner. You don't have anything, so you don't have anything inside of this level, no lighting, nothing. But we don't really need any lighting because it's a 2D game. So go ahead now and click on this tile map and click and drag it into your level. And now you can see, and by the way, if you don't know how to navigate around, you can basically just hold the right mouse button and click on W, D, S, and A. And as you can see here, we are inside of this level. We have added our tile map, and I like to change the position here in the details panel to 0, 0, 0 for the location. So it is 0, 0, 0 on this 3D level. And also to remove those annoying yellow lines I don't like, just go down here in the rendering tab and remove this one called show per tile grid when selected. Go ahead and remove that. And as you can see, it is basically a 2D level inside of a 3D space. And basically because Unreal Engine is a 3D engine, but it allows us to create this 2D map. And as you can see, the layers are actually here. As you can see, we have the base layer, and then we made the back layer, and then we made the background layer. So the layers are like pushed away from each other. And you can also give some spacing. I like to do that sometimes because it gives me space to add something between those layers when I code my level. So here, when you have the separation per layer, you can actually increase it to something like 10. And when you do that, it separates the layer even more. And basically, later on, you'll see why it's useful when you try to code your game and you add something in the front layer, back layer. But as you can see, it looks wrong. The tree is not on the tile. And this is because later on, it will look correct when we add the 2D camera, which is not really in this tutorial, but you can take a look at the other tutorial on how to add a character to this level. But for now, you can see it through the orthographic view. If you click up here and click on the right view, and then change this from wireframe to unlit, Now you can basically zoom in, and this is actually what it's going to look like when you add the camera, and everything will look correct. Okay, so for now, the problem is when we added the level, now you can see the lighting is not correct. What it needs to look like is if you click on the lit here, it needs to look like this in the unlit mode. So clicking on unlit, this is actually what it needs to look like. However, for some reason, if you click on the lit, you can see it looks totally wrong, and we need to change that. So let's go ahead and fix this, and we are almost finished creating this tile map. So let's first go ahead and click on edit, go to project settings. Inside of here, let's scroll down and click on the rendering tab. And in here, we need to change the anti-aliasing because we don't really need to do that. Anti-aliasing is basically smoothing out our game, and we don't need to do that. So here, as you can see, it is actually a bit smoothed out. And if you see here in the default settings in the rendering tab, you see something called anti-aliasing method. You can also search for it up here. And you can click on it and set it to none. And it's actually not smoothing it anymore. Also for the MSAA count, go ahead and select none. And now that is fixed. So let's close this down and let's fix the lighting and the colors here. So to do this, let's click up here, and in the visual effects, you have something called a post-process volume. What a post-process volume is, it's just like in Photoshop when you edit a picture and you edit the colors and you add a vignette and things like that. You add the saturation and brightness. This is basically what a post-process volume is. It just edits the colors and things like that in the game and the style of the game. So go ahead and add a post-process volume. And now for the post-process volume, as you can see, if you just try to edit, for example, the bloom here, and you click on the intensity and you increase it to something super high, you see nothing is really happening. And this is because if you click on G, you can hit a G to remove and show icons. So hitting on G to see the box here, if you enter it now, you can see the bloom actually works. However, if you leave this box, it doesn't work. And this is because you have to go down here and click on infinite extent. So it doesn't matter if you're inside of this box or if you're outside of this box, it will work anyway. So now we can adjust the bloom. We need to set the bloom to 0. And the exposure, we're going to set the exposure compensation to 0. And also for the max and minimum here, set it to 1 and 1. We don't want the exposure to actually affect the game. This is a 2D game. And then if you go down here for the image effects, we don't need this vignette here. So go ahead and set it to 0. And now if you scroll down here, we have something called miscellaneous here in the color grading. So go ahead and click on that and click on those 3 here and set them all to 0. So setting this to 0, setting this one to 0 as well, and setting this one to 0 as well. You can actually see how much it changed the image if you take a closer look at it. So you can increase this and decrease it, and you can see how much it actually changes. So all of these needs to be set to 0. Also scroll down here for the global illumination and reflections. We don't need that, so set it to none. Set this one to none as well. And then go down here in the ambient occlusion, set the intensity to 0. And for the motion blur, we don't need that either, so set that to 0 as well. So now we are almost ready with this. It looks a lot better already. So again, clicking up here, clicking on unlit, this is actually what it needs to look like. So going back to the lit mode, this is what it looks like. So it almost looks like it, but it's a bit darker in the lit mode. And by the way, to switch between those very quickly, so you don't have to click up here all the time, you can see here we have the shortcuts, Alt 4 and Alt 3. So clicking Alt 3, going to unlit, clicking on Alt 4, you can go to the lit mode. So you can switch between them like this. You can basically see that the only difference is our lit mode is darker. So let's go ahead and increase that. And we can do that again here in the post-process volume. In the color grading, let's click on the global color grading. This is where you actually change the style of the image. For example, the saturation, you can increase that and decrease it. And basically you can have a game in black and white, and you can do stuff like that. But the thing we need is something called gain. And basically it allows us to increase the light for this texture or this tile map. So go ahead and increase it until you're satisfied. So you can increase it. Again, click on Alt 3 to see the unlit mode. Click on Alt 4 to go back, and you can see ours is still darker. And you can basically just switch between them very quickly to see the difference. And I'm going to increase it. And by the way, you can increase it here while you click on all 3 and 4, so you can basically switch between them and see where you are currently. I'm just going to increase it slightly more here, and I think this value here is fine. So now if I click on the lit mode, you can see it looks like this. When I click on the unlit mode, it looks like this. So you can tweak it a lot more if you wish to. Sometimes I actually sit here for like half an hour or 1 hour and try to adjust as best as I can. But I'm satisfied with what I have for now for this tutorial. You can see it's almost identical. It just needs a little bit of tweaking. And again, what you can do is you can click on the saturation. You can try to increase it and decrease it slightly. You don't have to do much. For example, you can increase it by 0.1. Sometimes that's what's needed. And you can also change the contrast. So you can see what the contrast is doing as well. You can change the gamma as well, like this, and basically play around with all of these values. Again, sometimes it takes like 1 hour or 30 minutes to get it perfect, but once you have it down, and everything will look just nice. So for now, I think the game is doing it for me for this tile set. So the unlit mode's looking like this, the lit mode's looking like this, and I'm satisfied with what I have. So now you know how to make a platformer tile map, and I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to like this video and also comment down below if you want to see other 2D tutorials and what ideas you have and which tutorials you actually want to see. And again, you can also watch my next video on how to add a character to this map and how we can actually move around. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one.